Welcome to Cheat Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. She said she didn't care if I found out. I read that sentence on her phone at 2 a.m. and I sat with it for a long time. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it told me something I needed to know about the man I was going to have to become to get through what came next. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 33 years old. My wife Amelia and I had been married for 8 years. We met at 24 and grew up together in the specific way that people do when they share their entire adult formation with one other person. First apartment. First real jobs. First losses. The kind of accumulated shared history that makes you believe you know someone as well as it's possible to know anyone. I was wrong about what that meant. I thought it meant we were permanent. I thought the length and depth of what we had built was itself a kind of protection, that you don't casually dismantle something you've spent 8 years constructing. I thought that if something was wrong, she would tell me. We had always told each other things. I noticed the change about 2 months before I found out the truth. Not dramatically. She didn't become a different person. She became a slightly off version of the person I knew. More distracted. Less present in the particular way she had always been present. Fully in the room, fully in the conversation. There was a new distance I couldn't locate the source of. I asked her what was wrong several times across those weeks. She said she was fine. She said it in the way people say they're fine when they have decided not to tell you what's actually happening. I recognized the specific texture of it because I had known her for 9 years and I had heard her be fine and I had heard her not be fine and I knew the difference. I kept asking, gently. She kept deflecting. Eventually I backed off. Not because I believed her. Because I didn't want to push her further away by pressing for something she wasn't ready to share. What I should have understood was that it wasn't something she was going to share. It was something she was hoping I would never find out. I want to be careful about how I describe what followed, because I am aware of how it sounds when a husband describes watching his wife for signs of infidelity. I wasn't watching her. I was paying attention to her. Those are different things, and the difference matters to me. For 8 years I had paid attention to Amelia. I noticed when she was tired before she said so. I noticed when something at work was bothering her before she brought it up. I knew the specific way her voice changed when she was genuinely happy versus performing happiness for a social situation. Paying attention to the person you love is not surveillance. It is love expressed as presence. What I noticed in those 2 months was the accumulation of small things that individually meant nothing but collectively meant something was wrong. She started coming home later than usual on days when her schedule hadn't changed. The explanations were reasonable. Traffic, a colleague needing to talk, a meeting that ran over. Any one of them on any given day would have registered as completely ordinary. But the frequency had changed and the texture of the explanations had changed. They arrived too quickly. Too complete. Stories that are true don't usually arrive fully assembled. She started being more protective of her phone. Not dramatically. Not the obvious face-down placement or the angled screen. Just a slight shift in how casually she left it around. A slight increase in how quickly she moved to pick it up when it buzzed. She started being warmer to me in ways that felt compensatory. Small gestures that had the specific quality of someone who is managing guilt through kindness. I had been the recipient of genuine warmth from this woman for nearly a decade, and I knew the difference between warmth that came from love and warmth that came from somewhere else. I sat with all of it for weeks. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself I was imagining patterns where there were none. I had no proof of anything, and the consequences of accusing a faithful woman of infidelity were severe enough that I was not going to do it without certainty. One night she fell asleep early. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. I picked it up. I went to her messages with her closest friends first. I was hoping to find something that explained the distance, a health scare she hadn't told me about, a family problem she was carrying alone, anything that would make sense of the change without requiring the conclusion I was afraid of. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to put her phone down and go back to bed and feel ashamed of myself in the morning. The conversations with most of her friends were unremarkable. Then I found the thread with her best friend. And I found what I was looking for. About 5 weeks earlier, Amelia had told her friend that she needed to confess something. That something had happened with a man she knew. That she had enjoyed it but felt guilty because she was married and she knew it was wrong. She was vague about the details, but the details didn't matter. What she was describing was unmistakably what I was afraid it was. I took a screenshot. Kept reading. With more pressure from her friend, she eventually gave a name. She described how it had started. She said she hoped it would be a one-time thing, but that she couldn't stop thinking about it. That she felt bad about it because I was sweet and had been good to her. I noted that word. Sweet. The word you use for someone you feel mild affection for. Not the word you use for someone you're in love with. I searched the name in her phone. The conversation was there. Months of it. All of it. I read through it with the specific focused stillness of a man who has already passed the stage of hoping he's wrong and is now simply trying to understand what is true. Near the end of the thread, I found the exchange that ended me. He had asked her what she would do if I found out. She had written, "I genuinely don't care if he finds out. That just means things will be over." I set the phone down on the nightstand. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time. Then I got up, took a shower, made coffee, and started planning. I want to be honest about what happened in those hours between finding the message and the morning. I was not calm. I was not strategic. I was a man who had just discovered that his wife of 8 years had been having an affair and had told her affair partner that she didn't care if her husband found out, that his finding out would simply be an acceptable way for the marriage to end. I was in the specific private devastation of someone who has just understood that the person they loved most had already decided to leave them and hadn't thought them worthy of being told. I sat with that for a long time. The grief came first. The specific grief of losing something you thought was real and discovering that it had been becoming less real for longer than you knew. All those months I had been asking what was wrong and offering support and trying to reach her. All that time she had been moving away from me with deliberate intention and keeping me in the dark because it was easier for her if I stayed there. Then came the clarity. Not anger exactly. Something colder than anger. The specific clarity of a man who has stopped being confused and started being certain. She had said she didn't care if I found out. She had meant that my feelings about the situation were not a significant factor in her calculations. That I was not someone whose discovery of the truth would constitute a meaningful consequence. That I was, in the architecture of her decision-making, essentially irrelevant. I decided she was wrong about that. Not in a violent way. Not in a destructive way. But I was going to make sure that when everything ended, and it was going to end, that was already determined, it ended in a way that reflected the full reality of what had happened. Not a quiet mutual separation that allowed the narrative to be managed. Not a version of events that let her walk away having experienced no consequences for choices she had made with complete deliberate intention. I documented everything I had found. Then I put the phone back. Then I went to work. I lived inside that knowledge for 2 weeks. This is the part people find difficult to understand when I describe it. How did I share a house and a bed and a dinner table with a woman whose secret I was carrying for 2 weeks without breaking? The answer is that the man who would have broken was the man who still needed her to be who he thought she was. That man didn't survive the night I read those messages. What was left was someone with a different set of priorities. I watched her during those 2 weeks. Not with hatred. With the specific detached observation of someone who has already made a decision and is simply waiting for the right moment to act on it. She was still performing the marriage. Still coming home, still asking about my day, still making the gestures that constituted the surface of our relationship. I performed it back. I was good at it because I had been genuine for 8 years, and the muscle memory of genuineness is a convincing imitation even when the genuine thing has gone. I spent those 2 weeks getting organized. I met with a family law attorney named Catherine Park on a Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break. I brought her everything I had documented. She walked me through the process with the focused practicality of someone who had done this many times and understood that what I needed was information, not sympathy. I opened a new personal account at a different bank and began transferring my personal savings. I photographed and documented every significant asset in the house with timestamps. I called my brother and told him what was happening. He offered to come. I told him not yet. I wasn't ready for anyone else in the room until the moment required it. I didn't confront her. I didn't hint at it. I didn't leave any thread she could pull on that would reveal I knew. She remained completely unaware. The man she thought she knew, the one too sweet to be a significant consequence, the one whose discovery was filed under acceptable outcome, that man had disappeared. She just didn't know it yet. The conversation happened on a Sunday evening. I had chosen the timing carefully. The divorce paperwork was prepared. The financial separation was complete. The documentation was in order. There was nothing left to protect that hadn't been protected. She was in the living room when I sat down across from her. She looked up at me with the casual ease of someone who has no idea what is coming. That specific unguarded expression, the one that comes from complete certainty that you are safe, was the last time I saw her as someone I recognized. I told her I had gone through her phone 3 weeks ago. The casual ease disappeared. I told her I had read everything. The conversation with her friend. The full thread with him. All of it. She went through 3 expressions in about 4 seconds. Confusion first, the instinctive reaching for an alternate explanation. Then fear, the specific physical fear of someone who has been caught without warning and has no prepared defense. Then a kind of stillness that I think was her understanding arriving. She said, "I can explain." I said, "You don't have to." I told her I had read the part where she said she didn't care if I found out. That if I found out, it would just mean things were over. I told her I had sat with that sentence for 3 weeks. She started to speak. I told her I wasn't angry with her. That I had had 3 weeks to arrive at whatever I was going to feel, and I had arrived somewhere past anger. That I had loved her genuinely and completely, and I was sorry that hadn't been enough for her to tell me the truth before making the choices she had made. I set the divorce paperwork on the table in front of her. I told her Catherine Park had prepared everything. That it was as clean and straightforward as these things could be. That I wanted us both to be able to move forward without this becoming something worse than it already was. She was crying. I stood up. I told her she had said she didn't care if I found out. I wanted her to know that I had cared. I had cared about all of it. About her. About us. About what we had built. I picked up my suitcase from the hallway. She followed me to the hallway. She was asking me to stay. Asking me to talk about it. Saying that what she had written in that message wasn't what she had meant. That she had been in a different place when she wrote it. That it wasn't the full picture of how she felt. I believed that she believed that. I also understood that what someone says in a private, unguarded moment to someone they're having an affair with is more likely to reflect their actual state of mind than what they say to their husband of 8 years standing in the hallway with a suitcase. People perform for the people they're managing. They're honest with the people they're being themselves around. She had been being herself in those messages. I didn't say any of that to her. I just listened to what she was saying and waited until she had finished. Then I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for. That I genuinely meant that. I wasn't capable of wanting badly for someone I had loved for most of my adult life, even now. I wanted her to have a good life. I just wasn't going to be in it. She asked what I was going to do. I told her Catherine's number was on the top of the paperwork. That everything in the document was fair and I wasn't looking for a fight. That the house logistics were in there too, and I had already made arrangements for where I was staying. She was still crying. I opened the front door. She said my name once. Just my name. In the tone of voice she used when she really needed me to hear something. I stood in the doorway for a moment. Not because I was reconsidering. Because I wanted to mark the moment. To be present in it rather than rushing through it. 8 years deserved that much. Even now. I told her to take care of herself. Then I walked out. The door closed behind me with the particular finality of something that has been properly completed. I stood on the front step for a moment in the evening air. Then I walked to my car. I stayed with my brother for the first 2 weeks. He asked me on the 3rd night how I was actually doing. Not the surface version. The real one. I told him I wasn't sure yet. That I had spent 3 weeks being so focused on preparation and documentation and getting through the next thing that I hadn't had much space for the actual grief of it. That I suspected the grief was waiting for me when I stopped moving. He said, "Let it wait a while longer then. You can grieve when you're ready." That was good advice. The divorce process moved steadily. Catherine had been right that a clean, documented, cooperative approach was faster and less damaging than the alternative. Amelia retained her own attorney but didn't contest the terms substantially. For months after I walked out the front door, we were no longer married. I found a small apartment in a part of the city I had always liked but we had never lived in. I furnished it slowly, choosing things I actually wanted rather than things that fit the aesthetic we had accumulated together. It looked nothing like the house we had shared. That was intentional. The grief arrived eventually, as it always does. Not all at once. In the specific quiet moments that ambush you. A song that belonged to a different version of your life, a restaurant you both used to like, the particular morning light on a Sunday that used to mean something and now meant less. I let it arrive and I let it pass. That's all you can do. What I think about most, when I think about the whole thing, is not the betrayal itself. Not the messages. Not the affair. I think about the sentence. She had said she didn't care if I found out. And I think what that sentence had actually meant, beneath the casual cruelty of it, was that she had stopped believing I was the kind of person who would do anything unexpected. She had known me for 9 years, and she had concluded that she could see exactly what I would do in any given situation. I had spent 8 years being exactly who I was. She had mistaken that consistency for limitation. That was her error, not mine. Thank you for watching.